Good day from the Guide Shack. In this video, I'm going to share with you a lesson that I learned more than 10 years ago. It sounds so simple, almost cliche, it would be easy to discount, but the more that I find myself thinking about it, saying it, and implementing it in my life, the more that I find it to be true. And it came from a gentleman by the name of Barry Barton. If you've watched any of my hunting DVDs, you know Barry. Older gentleman, he's in his 70s now. I first started guiding him when he was in his late 50s, 2 artificial knees. The guy's been through a lot of things in life, and he's kind of, more or less at this point, he's kind of a friend, but also, he is a friend, but also like a second father figure to me. And he just has so much life wisdom, and he has just this subtle way of sharing things. And he said this to me multiple times. And like I said, it was so subtle and effortless and kind of common sense that I didn't pay that much attention to it. But he said this: just do the next best thing. He said it to me probably 20 times over the years. And you know, when we're thinking of advice, we want something concrete. We want something definitive and black and white. But it is so rare that that's going to happen. And if and when we get black and white advice, it's usually just going to get us through that one predicament that we find ourselves in. So in life, what I find what we need to look for are these truths that are transcendent, that they always work. And I have found this to be one of those truths. When in doubt, do the next best thing. And oftentimes you're not going to know what that best thing is, but do the best that you can do that you believe to be true. As long as it's not hurting others, and this is where the truth of God's word is so critical, is whatever you believe to be true, I would say life is set up like this, that is exactly what you have to do. Do what you believe to be true. Yes, take advice from other people, but then filter that out, because you're creating that filter. That's how we're building our instinct and our discernment. And the reason why I'm sharing this video now, it was just a couple of weeks ago, my daughter and I were in New Brunswick, Canada, and we went on a lake trout fishing trip and black bear hunting. The lake trout fishing was off the hooks, but it was a great trip. The bear hunting was kind of slow. First couple of days, I think the first 2 days, we only got one bear. I think we had 14 hunters in camp. So it was kind of slow, and then the third day got some bears. But where my daughter and I, Charlie and I, were hunting, we hadn't seen any bears yet. And matter of fact, the guide, he was taking us and 2 other hunters out. We'd seen a couple of bears, but they were all small. And so he was starting to feel the pressure, you know, we're winding down in the other end of the hunt, and Tony, the guide, says, "So Billy, you've done this a long time." Tony, he's like, "I've been guiding for 10 years, you've guided for 25 years, like, what do you do when, you know, you're not sure? I've got some other baits, but," he said, "the one where I got you guys, it's been hitting consistently." He goes, "There's a good track, I believe it's a good bear there." He's like, "What do you do? How do you know when to change and go to a different stand, or stick with what you've been doing?" And I didn't even think about it. I just said, "Well, Tony, you just got to do the next best thing." And the truck got kind of silent. I was like, who knows? Hindsight's not 20/20. Just because what you do didn't work does not mean that if you would have done the other thing, it would have worked. That doesn't mean that at all. And so there is a process that you just got to go through, and you're not always going to get it right. As it were, that night we got the bear. And what was really cool is, I think we were 2 days in, and we got an absolute downpour. Charlie and I, well, everybody did. It just poured on us. And I asked Charlie, you know, about the second or third day, I said, "Well, how much fun are you having? Scale of 1 to 10. She goes, "About a 7. And then that night when we were sitting there we were sitting in the stand for like 6 hours. Bugs weren't too bad, but they were there. I asked Charlie, I said, "So how about now? Still a 7 out of 10? And she goes, "Honestly, Dad, this has been the best week of my life." I was like, that's pretty cool. And then about a half hour later, she shoots her bear. So that was a pretty good, a really, really good trip. And another story that comes to mind when I think about this, do the next best thing. Both my daughters play softball, and they had a pitching coach that gave them this drill, and it was to take a towel. And the idea is that you take that towel and you lift it up as high as you can and you snap it down. You whip it down and you slap the ground as fast as you can. And so I was watching them, I was there to help reinforce, and I don't know much about fast pitch softball or pitching particularly. And I noticed my two daughters were using different methods. The one that I felt was right, the other one wasn't doing it quite right. And I asked the coach about that. I'm like, hey, which should she be doing this? And she's like, the coach said, you just got to let them figure it out on their own. As long as they're making that snap. He goes, for each person, they're going to learn at a different pace and it's going to look just a little bit different. But they've got to figure it out on their own and make it their own. And man, that was such a good lesson for me as a parent, is just be patient, tell them the best that we know, try to teach them the best, but make them do the repetitions and be consistent and then figure it out on their own. Like as coaches, I've noticed, particularly in baseball, a lot of times it seems like the more orders you bark at somebody, the more they get in their head, and then that just screws them up. Don Mattingly said, see the ball, hit the ball. And I think probably a million baseball players have seen that, is just keep it simple, and then each person, for them to individually go through their process to discover what it is that they need to do that is slightly nuanced to them, that it's not a black and white thing. Things are just a little bit different. We've got some exciting Billy Molls hosted adventures for 2026. First, we're going back to New Brunswick to fish giant lake trout by morning and hunt black bears by evening. I hosted a group here last spring, and because it was so well received, we're doing 2 weeks in 2026. So join us June 7th through 13th and June 14th through 20th.
30 inches, nice!
Next is the ultimate Alaskan fly-out, fly fishing adventure with Rainbow River Lodge. The dates are June 27th through July 3rd, 2026. This place has to be experienced to be believed. Excellent food and accommodations, top-notch guides, lots of bear viewing, and truly world-class fishing in some of the most pristine waters in all of Alaska, and so much more.
Yes! Woo, that's huge!
My daughter and I did this trip last year, and we had an absolute blast. So be sure to check out our website and shoot us an email, as many of our hosted trips fill up in weeks, even days. A huge thank you to everyone who's joined us on our hosted adventures. We've got many more in the works, and I hope someday to share a campfire with you. Flying an airplane, I went to get my pilot's license. I think I was like 21 maybe. I went to Prescott, Arizona. It was a month-long kind of a crash course on flying airplanes, and I didn't really like my instructor, and he was really forceful. He wasn't very patient. He didn't want to be an instructor. He just wanted to be an airline pilot, and he was just being an instructor because that's the natural progression of things, to get your time and your hours, your PIC, pilot in command, so that you can go on to the next step. And it was such a hurried atmosphere. When you'd come into land, you'd be like number 5, 6, or even 7 to land. And then when you're coming into land, there's somebody right behind you. And so oftentimes I'd be going too slow or too fast or whatever, and then the instructor would just have to take over the controls because he didn't want to cause an accident, which makes sense. And it was just such a hurried pace that I was there for like a week, and I said, you know what, this ain't for me. And I just decided that I was going to come back home and I was going to do it at my own pace. And I went to Rice Lake, Wisconsin, found an instructor. I liked her. Her name was Sandy Randall. And 3 months I had my pilot's license. It was just all about the pace. And when you're flying that plane, you're trying to learn, like, you don't have anything mastered yet. You really don't know anything. There's so many. You're trying to learn 100 things at once. And so it's incredibly confusing. And it's very draining and taxing. I would take a nap after every single lesson, and they'd be about an hour and a half long. Matter of fact, my grandparents at the time, they lived about 5 miles from that airport. It was about a 30-mile drive, and I would stop at their house. My grandma would always feed me, and they had this big sofa that was the most comfortable sofa in the world, and their house was always cold and quiet. And I would stop there, and she'd feed me, and I would just go lay down, and I'd sleep for like 2 hours because it was just exhausting. But the key is that if you stay consistent with it, over time it will come. Each lesson you have, each time you implement something, each time you do something, you're just going to learn one little bit at a time. And over time, those things will compound. And that is a big reason why I feel compelled to share these videos, because I was given the same lessons and the same examples over and over and over by all these mentors that I had, largely my hunters in Alaska, who kept consistently telling me the same things over and over and over again so that I believed them to be true. Faith is believing the things that you can't see. And that gets hard, particularly when you're in real struggles in life. Faith is a hard thing. It's hard to believe what we cannot see. It's hard to believe that, hey, this will happen if I do this, and this long enough. So you need those examples. And that's why I'm doing these videos, is I want to be an encouragement to you. Seek wisdom, seek mentorship from somebody to help reinforce these truths. But when it just all throughout your life, do the next best thing. And don't waste your time on hacks. If you haven't heard me talk about that before, you probably will. If you try to find a hack, if you try to find just the solution to get yourself out of this one predicament, yes, that's great. Sometimes, we need to do that. But focus on the overall picture. It's kind of like cramming for a test and just trying to get all the answers right, but you don't retain any of the information. That's not the way you want to go about life. You got to go through the process, learn those things that whatever that situation in your life is trying to teach you, is grasp onto that, harness that, and if you do that, if you become complete, if you learn every little nuance to whatever your life experiences that you're going through, don't try to skate out of that. Absorb that. Get comfortable on that. Be inquisitive. Never, ever stop being a student. I know when I got out of high school, I didn't do that for a couple of years. Like, I thought, well, I'm an adult now. It's time to just go put everything that I learned into practice. Just go out and work. No. Getting out of high school, that's just the beginning of your education. Don't try to hack things. Whatever it is, find something that you love and what you're passionate about, and find a vision, and then just keep stepping toward that vision, toward what you want to do, what you like to do. Keep working toward it the best that you know how, and eventually you may start off going 100 or maybe 89 degrees from where you need to go, but as you go 89 degrees, eventually you will figure out that, hey, I'm not going the right way, and then you'll get a little bit closer, and your path will be a windy one, but you'll get there eventually. So remember this: you're not after education, you're after transformation. These lessons, if you're just trying to learn from them, that's great, but you want to be changed by them. As you are changed by something, once you go through a process and it has its complete working on you, or an experience or a certain environment, and you absorb everything that happens and you learn everything that you possibly can, that won't just educate you, it will change you. And then once you're changed and transformed, that's when the newness of life, or your decisions from that point on, they just will become inherent. You won't even think about them. That's like discernment. The Bible would call that discernment, or in hunting terms, we would call that instinct. You don't even maybe necessarily know why you're doing something or why you're stopping to do something. You just sense like, whoa, this isn't right. And that only comes through repetition, consistency, and a lot of time. And all of these things, they're going to prepare you for the next adventure, for these new seasons of life. When I was younger, I didn't realize this, but these new seasons of life, they never stop coming. that's kind of hard. You have to embrace that. If you're not harnessing that, life is going to be one series of defeats after another. So you have to recognize that it's the challenge, it's the adversity, that's the nectar of life. That's where life gets great, because that's where you're going to grow, that's where you're going to discover who you are and discover the people that you're with. And that's what's going to help you grow to prepare you for the next adventure. And one of the verses that I so often share is Matthew 6:33. And this kind of comes in line with do the next best thing. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all the things you need will be added unto you. Is just do what God would have you to do. Or as the old saying goes, what would Jesus do? That's more or less the same thing. And the verse I'll share with you today is Romans 12, verses 1 and 2. So this is Paul's letter to the Romans. Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. We are called to be the hands and the feet of God. That's why we're put here. Verse 2. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. If you have a vision of what you believe you want to do, what God is calling you to do, who you are, I would bet 99% chance that it's not yet complete. Your vision isn't exactly what it is. You might very likely get to whatever that vision is, but if and when you get there, you're going to discover that there's something more to it. It's slightly different than you imagined, or the purpose of it isn't what you imagined. And there, in that struggle, when we can't do things, that's where God most often becomes real in our life, because we have to rely on him. And scripture also says, this is a big one, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And to run that through the filter of every one of our decisions, that's a must. And it takes a lot of time, but it is pretty simple. And it takes a lot of patience, persistence, long-suffering. This is all James chapter 1. And ultimately, you have to give yourself and others a lot of grace. Some people, we have a tendency to give ourselves grace, but not others. Some people give ourselves no grace, but they let other people walk all over them. You got to find a balance. You've got to give yourself grace to make mistakes, to know you're not going to do it right every time. And that's usually going to come at the cost of your pride, right? You've got to be doing things that you suck at, that you know you're not going to get it right. And as men, we don't oftentimes like to do that. So give yourself grace. You're going to make mistakes, but the key is make the mistakes now, because the farther you delve down the trail of whatever it is that you're trying to do, become, or accomplish, the pain of learning what you don't know is only going to get greater each day that you continue on and don't learn that lesson right now. It's only going to hurt all the more. So I appreciate you watching this video. I hope this helps somebody. If it does, please like, share, subscribe, comment, and if there's anything else that you have questions on, or you think I can maybe help you on, please feel free to leave that in the comments below, and we'll see you next time.